Hi, I'm Greg. I'd like to tie a fly for you by a gentleman, his name's Shane Stallcup, who passed away a few years ago. But the fly in question here is a fly called a Gilled Nymph. It's a great fly to use as a calabatus. It's got a body made out of ostrich, so it's got a lot of movement to it. And it also works very well as a searching pattern. If you're going to nymph and have a couple flies on as your lead fly or your point fly, tie one of these up in browns or tans, whatever color you'd like, and think of it as a very gilly, very movable hare's ear. So it's tied on a Tiemco 200R. We're going to use a size 16 on this one. The thread that I'm going to use is just some uni 8/0 in this olive dun. Seems to match up pretty nicely, but again, change that to whatever color you'd like. Wire for some ribbing is some extra fine or extra small gold. Then we're going to use, tie in about 3 pieces of some ostrich herl off this plume. If you're going to do a calabatus, tan and 1 olive would be perfect for that. Then the next piece we're going to tie in is some medallion sheeting. I still have some of the old medallion sheeting, but the new material will work very well for that as too. Sow scud dubbing, anything with a little bit of spikiness to match up. Legs are going to be partridge. I don't know if you can see that, but this is a dyed olive partridge. Really nice little modeling to that. Just beautiful feathers. If you guys have or starting to tie, I would definitely buy or invest in the entire cape, the entire skin. You get so many more feathers that you can use, where if you just buy those little bulk pieces, those little bulk packages, about 90% of that you're going to end up just throwing away. And so that's a rundown of the materials, so I'll just get started on this. I'm going to mount my thread, maybe 50–60% point on this fly. Then we'll get our wire, lay that in at about a 90-degree angle again. I know I've talked about that in previous videos. And just bring that straight back. Do that one more time. You make 2–3 wraps, and then when you pull that, you won't pull it out. Then I'm just going to tie that in on my side of the hook. And I'm just going to bring that right down to just maybe right above the barb of the hook. I'm going to grab 3 pieces of this herl off this plume, and you can see where I've just kind of made my way and cut those off. Sometimes when you get these, when they've been bleached and dyed, the tips kind of get a little thin. So what I like to do is just go in there with my fingers, and I'm just going to break that off. So I just broke those thin little pieces off. Measure my length for my tail. I'm going to make 1 second wrap. I'm going to let that go right on top of the hook. Bring my thread underneath. I'm just going to bring that forward. Now I can also, on bigger flies, you can build up a little underbody with your thread to kind of put in a little natural taper if you'd like. Or you can grab some dubbing, especially on the bigger flies. Spin a little bit on your thread. And at this point you can build just a little slight carrot-shaped taper to your thorax. That should be fine there. Take a lot of effort to get that on there real smooth, just kind of building in the taper. Now at this point, we're going to spin all three pieces together. And then I'm going to wrap that onto the hook. And you can, after each wrap, you can kind of pull everything back so you're not matting it too badly. You can see how that just really covers the hook nicely. At this point, I can cut this off. Then I'm going to grab my wire. I'm going to kind of brush this open just a little bit. Bring my wire underneath between the hook and the tail. Make that first wrap. It's going to kind of pop that tail up a little bit. Then at this point, I'm just going to run my wire through that body that I just made. It's going to reinforce that. And I can break this off, just helicopter it around. It'll just break right off. Now at this point, I'm going to grab my scissors, come right on top. I'm going to cut all those fibers off the top side of the fly. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom side. Just pick up your bobbin, your thread. Just make sure you're not going to cut your thread off. So that gives the fly an appearance of, we have all these gills going off to the side. Kind of turn my vise there so you can see that. Just give myself a little thread base there. I've cut the sheeting to where it's about the width of my hook gap. Kind of a good starting point. Lay it right on top. I'm just going to wrap backwards. This is a nymph, so proportion wise, we're looking at about 60%, 40% on that thorax. I'm coming back onto a little bit of the abdomen that I just tied in, just to so I don't have any gaps in my body. Get the sow scud, dubbing. You can use awesome possum here. Anything that's a little bit more coarse, a little fuzzier. Bring my thread right to the front. Got about one eye width behind the eye. Start my dubbing up that little ramp or hill. I can come right down. Now, the next piece we're going to use is the partridge. for the legs. And I'm going to prep this by pulling off this back piece here. You can even come in and cut that away. And then from the front side, I'm going to come in and just following the stem up, I'm going to cut a little notch out. So it creates a little V there. Then depending on the size of the fly I'm going to use, I can pull off how many fibers I want to do. So if this was a little size 20, of course I wouldn't need as many fibers for the legs as I would for this size, a size 16. Determine the length of my legs, which usually is just past the thorax of the fly. And as you can see here, if I do that, you will see that right by the eye of the hook, there's not going to be any stem. That's kind of what we want to shoot for. Now I'm going to lie both of these, or this piece, straight in with legs on either side of the thorax. You're not going to be able to see this. My fingers are going to cover this up. But I'm going to pinch those, hold them in place. I'm going to make 2, 3 wraps, make sure it's tight. And then when I let go, you will have legs on both sides of that thorax. The key to that little technique is don't let go of those legs until after you've tied them in. Otherwise they will want to wrap around, which in some cases that can be good. Cut the stem off as close as I can. The thread's going to be right behind the eye of the hook. I want to bring my medallion sheeting right over the top, forming the wing case. I'm going to make a couple of wraps to secure that in. Pull it back. A couple more wraps, and then now I want to form my head. A little whip finish there. There's 4, 5 wraps. Thread off. And then now I can trim this off. And by folding this back and then tying it down, it's going to make this a lot more durable. If I would have just cut it and whip finished, there's a chance that my wing case could have come right off, especially when you're fishing. And then now I can just, with a little tension, trim that off close. And there we are. We have Shane Stallcup's little Gilled Nymph. Looks real buggy in the vise, and then when you get this in the water and that starts moving around, and all this peacock herl starts, not peacock herl, but ostrich plumes starts moving around, that is a very lifelike fly. And don't save it just for your still water, but fish it in the streams like you would a hare's ear or any other attractor pattern. I think you'll get some success with it.